2. Welcome back to the Cage Rage Podcast. I'm Devin Miller. That is Chad Wagner. And we are back again for another Outside the Cage episode for the evening. It is March 4th, and yesterday, March 3rd, was Super Tuesday 2020 for the Democrat primary, where we saw Joe Biden win, I believe, 10 states, and we saw Bernie Sanders win, I believe, 5. Sanders now has taken the lead in delegate. I mean, Joe Biden has taken the lead in delegates by a pretty decent margin. We know that the DNC system of how they're going to do things at the convention, where they vote the first time with delegates, and if nobody has the majority, goes to super delegates. It definitely favors the establishment candidate. We know that the Obamas have come out and made statements that they will stump against Bernie to stop him from getting the nomination. Hillary Clinton has come out and basically said nobody likes Bernie Sanders in the party. He can't work with anybody. So you got the establishment forces. Bloomberg's out. He's getting set to pour his money onto Biden. Klobuchar's out. She's going to endorse Biden. Beto O'Rourke's already walking around. I guess he's going to be the gun control guy for Biden. I think I call her the pretendian. Elizabeth Warren, she's probably gonna be the next one to drop out.
Buttigieg, if she would have dropped out a little sooner, it might be slightly different right now, but probably not.
Buttigieg has already dropped out, and we all know he's going to support Biden. So it looks like the party's starting to coalesce around Joe Biden, and he looks inevitable as long as he doesn't have another aneurysm and is no longer able to speak. And I don't mean that in a respectful way, because Joe Biden used to be a manly man. I remember him spanking Paul Ryan in the vice president debate in 2012, and he used to be a great orator, very powerful speaker.
8 years is a long time when you're 69.
Yeah, very masculine. He's got a lot of experience, 30 years in government, a senator, a vice president, a lot of foreign policy experience, but he's also got a lot of scandal, which if he ends up running against Trump, the whole Ukraine thing is coming right back out with Hunter and everything. There's so much to talk about here, but the biggest thing that we're going to talk about here, Chad, because you are a self-professed, I joke around with you all the time because you always carry a disclaimer. Chad is a far left liberal. He votes Democrat. That's what he stands firm on that. I'm much more of I'm a far right conservative Christian libertarian, whatever. We disagree, but we see common ground on a lot of things. We're going to talk about the Democratic Party tonight, because what is going to happen? We've got another guy that's on our show a lot, Anthony Scott Pyatt, and he's even more to the left than even Chad is. And he's even coming out cautioning people to not be Bernie only.
Yeah.
Because what's going to end up happening, this party could fracture. And I hate to spell the news for it, but here's the headline from the Drudge Report right today. Biden can finish Bernie off in Michigan. That's the top headline here. That's the next big state in the primary. Biden's going to have a lot of delegates. We know he'll win the super delegates. So it's looking inevitable. What's going to happen to the Democratic Party, Chad? Are they going to? We saw that undercover video from Project Veritas where the Bernie staffer was saying Milwaukee will burn if they screw him with the nomination. Cities will burn, like Antifa, the radical left. They are going to flip out if they do this again to Bernie Sanders and their supporters. If they push them out at the convention, don't give them a voice. We're still hearing about that from 2016, about how he never really was given a fair shot.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't in 2016. He's not in 2020. None of that's going to change. There is an establishment. I mean, Biden came right out and said the establishment is the middle class. And I thought, Jesus, these are the people that are supposed to be representing us, the middle and lower class people of the world, which we all are. And I know a few very rich people, but I don't know any rich people in Indiana. And I know a whole bunch of people who think they are. And the ridiculousness of that, and the idea that these people vote in the best interests of the billionaires club when they will never be that, because they say it's the right thing to do or they say that it's either gun control, abortion, or taxation is theft. More or less. That's kind of how they say it.
That was actually a question
Welfare queens and all that. When these people are welfare queens themselves, so that's a hard thing to accept. But as far as Super Tuesday went, I'm not even a little bit surprised. And I'm a Bernie backer, and I've been a Bernie backer for a very long time, obviously. But that doesn't mean he's going to win. And let's take it one step further. Let's say Bernie does pull off Michigan, and that let's say that the Democrat Party goes, oh crap, you know what? We're going to run this because the only thing that can beat a radical is a radical, which I actually believe to be mostly true. So let's say that they actually go, Bernie can win this simply because he can pull so many independents. He can pull so many people that wouldn't otherwise vote, that aren't going to vote if we run Biden. What if Bernie won the presidency? And the truth is that we just have another Jimmy Carter on our hands because he doesn't have Congress. Well, he's got Congress, but he doesn't have full Congress. I mean, I say Congress is in the House and the Senate, which is what Congress really is. But I'll break it up into, he has the House, but he doesn't have the Senate, so it doesn't make any difference. He's not going to get anything passed. He's going to have to use executive order to do anything he wants to do, and his own party will fight him on that, as they're already doing right now. So at this point, God, I hate to concede to this, but we're almost better off as liberals to have Joe Biden in that place, and I hate to concede to that. But Joe Biden can beat Trump, so I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I don't think he can either, unless he was able to somehow convince, like maybe Michelle Obama or something, to run as a VP. But I don't think he wants to. But here's what I've heard. I've got a buddy he was my caseworker when I was a rebellious teenager. I was actually on probation. He was my caseworker. Old Italian guy. Smart as can be, very cultured, very well international travel. He's a 70-year-old lifelong Democrat, very liberal. He showed up at my house randomly Saturday to bring me some chimichangas. And we got to talking about, and they were homemade, they were great. But we got to talking about, and he makes some amazing lasagna also. But we got to talking about the Democrat primary. And this man hates Donald Trump. But he said that he said basically the same thing that boxing promoter said just about like last week, that he might have to hold his nose and vote for Trump if Sanders was the nominee. And he was saying that he wants to support Biden. And it got me thinking, I'm like, who do I know that's supporting Joe Biden other than – this is like one of the first people I've met that's saying it. It's older Democrats. It's older.
My dad.
It's older blue blood establishment Democrats that you can guarantee are going to be a high voter turnout rate. It's all the 50 and younger, much more, Democracy Now!, Nation Magazine, Young Turks, it's those type of hardcore leftist progressives that are coming out of Berkeley and stuff that are supporting Bernie Sanders right now. So you've got this. I've asked that question so many times online. If they do not run Joe Biden, is the Democratic Party in danger of losing moderates to Trump? Because Trump is not a Tea Partier. I've said that also forever. He was not a Ron Paul. He was not a Rick Santorum. He was not a Ted Cruz.
He's a registered Democrat for most of his life.
He is much more liberal. I wouldn't say liberal, but much more centrist in a lot of economic policies that a lot of the working class cares about. He's for tariffs. He did give some tax cuts, but he's definitely not some limited government. He wants to invest in infrastructure and stuff. Like he's saying a lot of things that a lot of Democrats would say. And his kids Ivanka and Kirshner were lifelong Democrats. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of potential crossover. And he's definitely not a social conservative in a lot of ways. He came into office supporting gay marriage and all this kind of stuff. So other than like abortion, which he's done very little to curb back. So,
they never do.
Yeah. So there's not really anything that they would seem to lose, but they do see a radicalized version of Sanders. And what he said to me, and I want to see your opinion on this. he looked at me because he was a big Barack Obama fan. He was the one who got me to vote for Barack Obama when I was 18 years old. First man I ever voted for. He told me, he was like, Barack Obama would have never been so politically reckless to go on 60 Minutes and praise Fidel Castro in an election year. That's the way he put it. He was like, it's just political sloppiness. And it's like he doesn't know what the population that he's speaking to is. So he looks at it like Sanders getting nominated is just a death knell to the Democratic Party. And a lot of the establishment believes that. Are they wrong? What do you think?
There are different polls, and remember the polls said that Hillary was up double digits the week of the election. So and I personally kind of knew that wasn't the case, and I had very strong suspicions that Trump was going to actually slide through this or become or get very, very close. I thought Hillary would win because I just didn't think it could happen. But I knew so many people that were voting for Trump based on that. Look, people that vote for Trump in general are not voting on Trump's policies. They're voting on the enigma that is Donald Trump. They're not voting on celebrity. They're voting on cult of personality. No different than any of the rest of the political leaders of our country or any other country for that matter generally are. But with Trump, it's so boldly exaggerated. The fact that he came out and said things like, no more bullshit. And people's jaws dropped, they were, oh my God, he said shit. Why every president every single candidate should be saying, fuck this, and we're done with this bullshit, and we're sick and tired of this kind of shit. They should all be copying what he's doing because it beats them.
The one thing Trump has going for him, and I think you'll agree with this, Chad, is he's got that alpha male traits. He's got that I apologize to nobody. I knew that he was going to be the Republican nominee because I knew his base, and I knew that when Megyn Kelly tried to call him out about calling women fat slobs and stuff, and he said just Rosie O'Donnell, you would never hear a polished politician say that.
Nope.
And the way he would speak when Jeb Bush was talking about, being tough and stuff, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're a tough guy, Jeb. You're tough. You're tough." Just like laughing him off, like. And he's like, "Well, you'll never win the presidency like that." He's like, "Well, I'm not 43%. You're at like 2. So okay." Like he was just insulting them, bashing them, destroying them. And
everybody gets a name: Pocahontas, Sleepy Joe. Crazy Bernie,
Sleepy Joe. What was it with Ted Cruz? Little Marco, Lion Ted. He's so smart with that, and he understands the celebrity type of culture that we live in today.
And more than that, Devin, he understands the American. He understands the American 25 to 65 isolation of white males that has occurred over the last 8 years.
But at the same time,
he understands that, and he's able to tap into that.
He's pulling more black voters from Democrats than any Republican president in history. So I think it's something with his like unapologetic. Just he goes around and acts like a badass. And the Democratic Party should take notice of that. Like you said, they should come out and just start ripping people.
The best thing Bernie could have done was come out and said, "You know what? Fuck you, you son of a bitch. You're a worthless piece of shit liar, and I'm going to kick your fucking ass all the way to the White House. You worthless, stupid son of a bitch. You're so fucking dumb. You ran from the war. You ran from this. You ran from that. And then all you want to do is send our boys to war. You worthless, cowardly piece of shit. You ought to be shot in the face."
Yeah, and he should have been ripping Hillary Clinton left and right,
shredding her.
You are a corrupt career politician hack. You're a fraud. You're
no different than Trump.
Yeah, your charity was a fraud. You corrupted Haiti. You're a disgusting pig. You failed as a Secretary of State. You're a warmonger. You know, he should have been hitting her with all that stuff. You were never you're only what you think is going to benefit you now. You haven't been consistent for 20, 30 years. You know, he should have been on.
Devin, you know the old saying.
But instead he endorsed her.
When Republicans have a firing squad, they line somebody up and they shoot them. When Democrats have a firing squad, we line up in a circle. There it is, man. They're playing chess and we're playing checkers.
Bernie, though,
we're supposed to be the smart guys in the room.
I got this message though from he's a black Democrat that's on my Facebook, and he was a former fighter, and he's a big Bernie Sanders supporter, and he's disgusted by what's going on right now because everybody's starting to see the tea leaf that it's going to be Biden.
Yeah, everybody knows it.
He messaged me this randomly last night because he's seen some of my posts. He said, if the DNC does Bernie like they did him in 2016, he will not capitalize NOT, not campaign for Biden like he did Hillary. Mark my words. What happens if that happens? What if Bernie Sanders says, I don't care if we lose, we're tanking this party because I'm running away with this. I'm taking my faction and I'm campaigning against them. You know,
at this point, Devin, it's too important to, and then maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think I am. I think it's too important for us to win the White House this time more than any other, just based on the impeachment and the literal cornucopia of lies that have been told over and over and over and over and over again. I think the New York Times was the one who took a year ago now. They used their middle section, which is the most expensive section, to list all of the lies that Trump has told, and it was in categories, newspaper column categories, and it took up a full 2 pages, and that's what they fit on there. And then they dot because there were more. These are confirmed actual lies that he told in public. The guy literally, not figuratively, he literally convicted himself. Any attorney, any cop that would have been talking to him could have arrested him, made that case, and the prosecutor could have prosecuted him strictly based on what he said in public voluntarily and said, yes, I absolutely did this. I said this. I did that. It's a quid pro quo. That alone tells me how important this campaign really is.
Yeah, but
so here's
the intent. They were
okay, but
they can't charge. They knew they had no case. And on top of that, they didn't want to go down that rabbit hole because it could kill their nominee when they dig up all the dirt that he was doing. And
right, that was a really stupid thing to do. I didn't agree with impeachment. I said, let the electoral process work it out. If you try to impeach him, he's going to win either way. And if there's one thing that this guy knows how to do, it's how to take a victory and make another victory out of it. He's done it his whole life. He can lose, ass down, lose every battle, but win the war, and he won. And he does it all the time. The guy has filed bankruptcy 7 times. He's been divorced 3 times. God only knows how many women he's paid off and he's got on hush money now. Not that I even care about any of that because I'm not a moralist. So I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm just saying that all of that stuff, when it happens with Biden, and it's all going to come out for Biden is going to answer to it and try to be the stand-up guy. Mm-hmm. And what he should do, and this is the only way that the Democrat Party.
You mean Biden called the porn star horseface?
Biden should just do this instead. He should go, you're trying to tell me about deception and lies and theft when your Children's Cancer Institute was fined $2 million because it stole $12 million. Then whatever the numbers are now, I don't remember, but you get the idea. But the only thing Biden should do is throw everything back at him and deflect. That's the only thing he should do is deflect and deny and lie his head off. And then pretend when he's not talking about that and dodging that kind of shit, he should talk about the issues. Well, here's what Trump did. Trump did this, Trump did that, Trump did this, Trump did that. Here's what I did as vice president with President Obama. And I think that's probably the only way he can win. But you're right. Either way,
he's going to be stuttering all over himself.
What they've done to Bernie at this point, it almost requires a complete rebellion, a complete redesigning of the Democrat Party. The DNC needs to completely, probably just go away, and we need to do kind of a Tea Party thing. But you can't call it Antifa, obviously. Yeah, we almost need to go. I mean, you can't go rainbow, you can't go green. Where do you go if you're a Democrat and you're a liberal and you've got nobody to vote for? Do you hope that here's one thing that I don't think a lot of people have thought of yet. And I truly believe that Trump is going to win this. And I'm going to continue to say that, because as long as I do, less Trump supporters will show up to vote because they'll go, oh, he's got it in the bag, like we did when Trump kicked Hillary's ass, even though she won by 3 million votes. Delegates are what, the electoral college is what matters. So I want to
agree with me. That's
I'm a supporter of the electorate college.
I was gonna say you agree with me. You're one of the few liberals that agree with me. Just because that didn't work out in your guys' favor last time, don't throw that away. My God.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's what happens when it works out in their favor instead of ours.
And if you want to break the country apart, destroy the electoral college, but go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, do I think that Super Tuesday ultimately will be the end of the Democrat Party? No, I don't think that. Democrats are they're too set in their ways. They're too stuffy about we're too stuffy about who we are. We're too up our own asses about what we know and that we're educated and we're the smart guys in the room and blah blah blah, and that all those hillbilly no tooth whatever Trump voter guys, they whatever they say, which is partially true. But Biden, how did Biden beat Sanders? He beat him in the South. That's the thing. He kicked his ass.
He won't win the South against Trump,
but he won't beat Trump in the South. And the Dixie Democrats don't exist anymore. That all of that changed with LBJ, and when he passed the Civil Rights Act, he said we lost the South for a generation. In fact, we lost the South for several generations, probably.
He also said quite a bit of racist language about enslaving black people for a generation, but just saying.
Oh, I totally agree. I was
gonna say they
totally agree. LBJ was Lyndon B. Johnson drank a fifth of whiskey and smoked at least 5 cigars every single night. Every night. That guy was a bully. He was like Trump. LBJ is a guy who could kick Trump's ass. LBJ would get you into an elevator and corner you, and he would stand over you in a threatening manner.
I read a really interesting biography about him.
Yeah, he would grab guys by their ties.
Brutal man. Like he was really a hard ass, a hard ass of hard asses. But real quick, this is a side road. This is a side road.
He's a pretend hard ass anyway.
Real quick, because I got a point. This is a side road, but it's a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while, because me and you have had this conversation before, because as a truck driver, I used to deliver in Canton, Mississippi 4 times a week with my uncle when I teamed there. And I've been all over the East Coast. I've been all over New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, all this. And I've told you many times I've seen more racism on the East Coast by far with the way they interact with each other and talk about each other. It's insane how they congregate in little communities too. And the way they'll speak about each other in racist terms and stuff. and just openly. I mean, they'll be getting in fights on the street and just yelling at each other to you F and this, that, or whatever. It's crazy. It blew my mind going there.
But you're not talking about just white versus black.
No,
You're talking
different
Asian.
cultures.
You're talking about
all different cultures.
the old Italians, the Irish. They're all kind of
there's different Latinos that hate each other. And for example, Cubans and Mexicans I know hate each other, and Cubans and Puerto Ricans don't really get along too well. But what I was about to get at is, and I don't want to get it like on a rant about the Civil War and stuff, but Hillary Clinton with like her deplorables comments in 2016, and Trump and the Republicans have seized upon, and it's not just because they're manipulating it and exploiting it. It's the truth, Chad. And I wish that the left would get this through their head, that they are alienating a gigantic potential chunk of the working class in America.
Totally agree.
They're misrepresenting them. For example, there's a really great book by Thomas DiLorenzo, who is not any racist guy, who wrote a book called The Real Lincoln. In this book, he talks about how the North, for example, they thought that they were fighting to preserve the Union during emancipation. First off, Lincoln was a gigantic racist, said a lot of very, very racist things, wanted to deport them all and stuff. And this matters to this, so I'll get to it. But after emancipation, like a large chunk of the Union Army defected because they did not want to fight for the emancipation of black people. Yeah. Black people were treated like crap all across the North. They were, completely segregated, couldn't serve on courts, couldn't face their accusers, couldn't do this, couldn't work for, in established businesses. They were completely ostracized. They were treated like cattle. And and like about 3% of the South was slave owners. So there is a legitimate argument, and a lot of them fought side by side with the Confederate Army. I'm not some neo-Confederacy or nothing, Confederate or nothing, but when history's written by the winners, and they have made it to where it's like, oh, the North was just complete abolitionist, when the abolitionist movement was a very small sect of the population in the North. And the South was not, the North was not any more or less racist than the South was. So the South still to this day, has this stigma that a lot of people will attach to them, that they are just white slave owner racist. And when you go down south, I have never been down, dude. I've been to Alabama. I've been to Mississippi quite often.
Me too.
They have heavy black populations down there.
Yes,
they are proud of their Southern heritage. They are proud of being South. I'll see a lot of them flying the Confederate flag out their truck and stuff. And it surprises you when you go down, because it's like almost like a culture shock, because I didn't expect it. So all I'm saying with this is if there's this elitist coastline liberal mentality that's misrepresenting a large part of middle America, how is that not going to be bad for? Because these aren't the same people that are going to be taking political polls either. They're backwoods, working class, rural people who are not into all this stuff. A lot of them aren't heavy on social media. You really can't gauge what these people are thinking. And then the polls come out, and then they go to the voting base, and they're surprised that they lost so bad, because they're just disconnected from a large portion of the population. And I think that that's really where the liberals are going wrong. And I think it's just bad politics. Joe Biden is somebody that I think, though, might tune the party back to sanity when it comes to that. He's been he's understood the working class a little bit better in the past than somebody like a elitist like Hillary Clinton, or even a coastline Vermont, liberal like Bernie Sanders would. There's not too many working class men who are gonna resonate with Bernie Sanders, a lifelong politician, and all they're gonna hear is commie, and they're gonna or a socialist, and they're gonna write him off. There's a lot of blue collar men like that, and you know it.
You're absolutely right. And look, I think where, first of all, gun control.
That's true. They got to drop that. They've lost.
If liberals had any sense at all, if the Democrat Party had any sense at all, we would say we don't want anything to do with gun control.
For sure, dude. They've
Not
lost the
we don't
battle.
want anything to do
There's
with.
more
it.
guns in America now.
Everybody should own a gun. It's America. It's the Second Amendment.
For
You want a gun? You own a gun. You want a cannon? You own a cannon. You want a nuclear weapon? Okay, we got to draw the line somewhere.
Brilliant.
I absolutely agree with that. And you know what that's going to affect? Nothing. If the gun laws, if they even put them in place, which they wouldn't, they'll never get it done. So why even talk about it? But they're not using that the same way that conservatives, specifically the Christian right, use the abortion issue. Christians use the abortion issue to make it sound like, or the Christian right do, they make it sound like they're, slicing women's stomachs open, yanking babies out and cutting their heads off and selling their body parts.
Real quick, Chad, real quick. Conservative right media is who you're meaning, because
yes,
there's a lot of Christian conservatives who that is a very important issue to them because of the sanctity of life.
Right.
And we have heard cases there's been undercover stings of Planned Parenthood execs talking about selling body parts.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to get into all that.
I'm just saying.
But what I am saying is this. I'm saying that the right uses abortion the way the left thinks they're using gun control.
Completely agree with
that. It just doesn't make any sense because they're not comparable. They're not comparable, and they're not going to be because and remember this. The right has had the opportunity since I've been alive. The right has had the opportunity to completely annihilate any abortion whatsoever 3 times.
Trump has signed.
And how much have they done? Nothing.
Trump has signed 3 budgets that have fully funded Planned Parenthood.
Do what?
Trump has signed 3 spending bills that have fully funded Planned Parenthood. I understand.
Democrat.
I completely agree with this. I don't feel like that though. Real quick,
if it weren't for the specific problems first of all, if the guy wasn't a fucking lunatic and I didn't want his hand on the football, that's one thing, because he's a lunatic, and he is the kind of guy who could simply out of ego launch a nuclear weapon or 2 or 3.
Well, he's been pretty restrained so far.
I mean, he dropped the Mohab, the mother of all bombs,
and didn't do anything with it.
I'm just saying he did it. There's no other president who did.
He did assassinate a top general. But,
I'll do it. What he was saying was, "I'll do it. This is a threat, and I'll do it." And you know what? He's a Ronald Reagan in that way. And I see Trump as a more charismatic, less give a shit Ronald Reagan. That's pretty much what he is. And Ronald Reagan was a pretty far right guy. And man, the 80s were a tough thing to live through. If you you didn't wear shit kickers and chew and think all women were property and think that those queers ought to die and all that kind of shit, that I grew up with. Literally
in the 80s, I think of hair bands and spandex.
That's a whole different 80s. Now I'm just talking about the 80s that kids went to high school and
Journey and stuff.
Well,
Bon Jovi and
all of that's another stain on the 80s, and we have to suffer the consequences of it.
We also called a soy channel.
Puppets came out today 34 years ago, so we gave you that. So you're welcome, world. But the point is that Reagan was a tough guy too. He was tough talk. He was we will kick your ass. We will unleash hell and high water on you. And you don't hear that from the left, because we want to hug and love everybody. And we have to stop taking hugs to a gunfight. It just doesn't work that way. This is politics. It's American politics. We have all the money. We have more money than the Republican Party does. The Democrat Party has way more money in it. They just don't spend it.
I'll throw a curveball on you though, because I genuinely do believe. I don't get into my conspiratorial side too often because a lot of people don't want to ever go down that road. But
I think it's fun. Let's do it.
I don't think it's really that big of a conspiracy. I think that the same forces fund both sides, man. I mean, the left has the George Soros, the right has the Sheldon Adelsons. If you look at Biden and you look at Trump, what are they going to be completely surrounded by? They're going to be completely surrounded by Zionists. They're going to be completely surrounded by Council on Foreign Relations, inside military-industrial complex people. They're going to still appoint the same, hierarchy Jewish establishment to the Federal Reserve. They're still going to be in the Bank of Wall Street. They're still
Devin,
still going to be continuing the same exact military, agenda that's been going on for decades now. You look and
that's the reason Bernie's not there, because he won't play ball, and they will when they get in. When Biden gets
that's the reason Tulsi's not there. Tulsi was the real one that they hated. Bernie Sanders had much more of a chance than Tulsi Gabbard ever did. And Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not like, me, I'm a socially conservative, I'm not, I don't favor her social politics. I would have been very, very tempted to vote for her simply for the fact that she was clearly the true anti-establishment candidate.
Agreed.
Trump has been a Trojan horse, if anything. He has been completely bankrolled by the exact same people. Sheldon Adelson and all these different right-wing. That's why he's appointed John Bolton and all the same people that George Bush had. And he was able to create this kind of, illusion of, controlled opposition with the Bushes and with the Republican establishment. But then he gets in office and he's just surrounded by them. And you see the Democrats with Obama, it was the same continuation of the same banking establishment.
Is it a revolving door of the same people on the Democrats side versus the same people on the Republican side, or are they just the exact same people?
I think they're all a part of the same structure. I think they have a little bit of policy disagreements within themselves, but ultimately they agree on the big foundational agendas of
exactly. The difference is that Bernie Sanders was talking about he was talking about feet instead of inches, and the rest of the policymakers, the legislators, up to the executive, up to the president and even the vice president, they talk in terms of centimeters, probably less than inch. Well, most of them aren't smart enough to know the metric system, but so they're talking in inches instead of feet. Sanders is talking about feet. When you talk about a foot versus an inch, that's 12 degrees of separation of changing things, and that's going to really, really shake things up. And there were a whole bunch of people who didn't want that around, because when they saw it, they said, well, if this comes through, he won't get it done. But then we got another Jimmy Carter on our hands.
It'd be a failed government. There'd be nothing.
Except with Jimmy Carter, he went out and just did good elsewhere and is still doing good elsewhere in the world. And he left politics behind because he was disgusted by it. Or maybe they said, we can fucking kill you. You can be JFK. We don't care. Or you can
they've proven that.
Maybe that's what it is. And I'm not so sure that Trump won't get himself into a situation. I kind of hope this, actually. What if Trump gets himself into a situation over the next 4 years where he actually starts to show his true colors and becomes more of a liberal, which he's been a registered Democrat most of his life, keep in mind. I mean, he was a New York Democrat. Now he's in Florida, of course, to avoid the problems he's getting ready to run into if he doesn't get reelected. But nonetheless, Trump is a registered Democrat for most of his life. And because of that, you have to wonder, is some of this, shucking and jiving so that he can get to a point where he can do liberal things, and maybe he winds up being far more centrist and far more left-leaning than we think right now. And I always go back to this simple fact that we covered on the Cage Rage podcast with Miguel. He's always got a brilliant analysis of boxing history, and we talked about Jack Johnson, the great black champion Jack Johnson, the first heavyweight black champion and all that. And you can beat John Sullivan. He beat everybody. He was a bad man. And he got arrested for transporting women across state lines that were, to my understanding, white women in a black man's car. And so he was arrested for that. And Donald Trump pardoned him for that. Mm-hmm. Now, that went under the radar and nobody ever said anything about it. And I always remind people
look at any good deed as being, just a show, but if that's the case, you can't do anything right. We got somebody that's been commenting on here, and I want to bring your point because you were talking about Trump, and I know that this is an issue that I think that we can talk a little bit about, just analyzing, because I think he's been a little bit inconsistent here, and although I don't know where to really nail him down on, but Mitridate commented and said Trump has made the USA energy independent, no need more for stupid Middle East wars. And also he said Obama inherited 2 conflicts, ended up with 7. I definitely agree with that part, because Obama did come in with this campaign of, being more, drawing back on Middle East conflict, and didn't. Trump kind of did the same thing, but Trump's been all over the place. I mean, he's been just totally continuing the rhetoric toward Iran, which is all just 100% a Zionist operation. But yet he has been kind of in and out about Syria, about backing off of Syria.
He did back out. I mean, he
100% a Western-funded uprising where they imported arms and navigated radical sects into that region to go after Assad. But then at the same time, he's bombed Syria. So that's been all over the place. He's been seemingly diplomatic with North Korea, but then very turbulent with China and Iran. He did just announce that, we're going to pull out of Afghanistan, which props to that. You got to give him credit where credit's due. But yet he's still, very much aligned with the Saudis. I mean, Jared Kushner's been going over and, without security detail, visiting the Crown Prince and stuff, which is just insane.
That's nuts.
It's I don't know where to nail down with Donald Trump, because for a while during the last presidential cycle, I kind of bought into him being this, because Hollywood hated him. Wall Street hated him. Both political establishments seemed to hate him. The media hated him. So I'm looking at it like, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Donald, I was very skeptical of him, but, I was looking at it like, I know this guy isn't a Tea Party conservative, but at the same time, he's offending a lot of people. He's saying and doing a lot of things, and seems to be this anti-establishment leader that we could possibly have for once. But he's just got John Bolton, Mike Pompeo. I mean, these are people that I would not. This isn't Rand Paul. This isn't the true. This isn't the Tulsi Gabbards of the left or the Rand Pauls of the right. The true renegades of their parties. This is straight up establishment stuff, but it's been just inconsistent, and I don't know where to really nail him down. I think he's been hit or miss with foreign policy. That's one thing, and I think that both of us can probably agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think he has a foreign policy, because I don't think he knows what it means.
You think it's getting dictated to him?
No, I think that he's the kind of guy who's like, I think he wakes up and decides, I'm going to have bacon or sausage, and that's probably the most complicated thing he does all day. And then the rest of it is just I'm just going to react. He's the poster child for ADD, and hey, there's Iran. Look, China. Oh, trade agreements. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, North Korea. Oh, I love North Korea. North Korea is great. And, look, I should have a Nobel Prize for this. And then Venezuela and Chicago, you better get your shit together. We're going to come down to each one of you, and we're going to bomb the fuck out of you. We're going to beat up Chicago. I mean, he has zero filter, which I think a lot of people like. And that's why he gets those votes, because people are sick and tired of filters. People watch podcasts now, and they don't watch TV anymore. If they listen to radio at all, it's satellite radio, but they damn sure don't listen to regular radio anymore, because you can't say shit on the radio. You can't say
commercials every 4 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, people are sick and tired of being spoon-fed this garbage that they don't want. That oh, well, here's an artist that we invested all this money into, we have to get 2 more albums out of them no matter what. And we need the DJ to push these songs. And so you would be on the school bus listening to these songs, or in your car listening to these songs before we had iPads and stuff, iPods and you know, all the carry-on stuff that we can do now. And it was just awful, but you kind of tolerated it and dreamt that one day you wouldn't have to. And I think Trump is that dream too. We've got a guy who will say whatever the fuck he wants, whenever he wants, and no one is going to tell him not to do it. And the more they tell him not to, the more he does it. It's
is it beatable? Is it beatable with this crew of Democrats? We'll end with that.
No, so going back to the main problem.
Does the party fracture? Finish with that. Does the party fracture from this? Are they going to?
No, the party doesn't fracture. It stays together. But the Bernie Sanders days are over. He's too old anyway. Like we discussed earlier today, I wasn't aware of this.
Do they move to Tulsi? Does Tulsi become the new rock star of the left, or is she too in line with because she's on Tucker Carlson?
What's going to happen is this, Devin. The left is going to grow up in the next 4 years, possibly 8 even, because that might happen too. We need to
candidate that would have smashed Trump. She's beautiful. She was a veteran. She's articulate. She's a liberal, but she's friendly with conservative media. She's on Tucker Carlson all the time. He loves her. Ron Paul loves her. Dude,
and she could stand right in Trump's face and go, "You don't talk to me that way. You watch your mouth.
She's a bad
your tongue out of your head."
She would have smashed him. But since she, at one point in her life, was against gay marriage because of her religion, and at one point in her life, and because she defends India pushing out radical Muslims and over by Kashmir and stuff. I've heard Anthony say that many times. Oh, well, she's buddies with Modi and stuff. Well, yeah, because they got literal problem. I mean, they got worse problem than we have on our border.
Hey, let me tell you something, Devin. Let's move in. Let's move 1 million Muslims from the Middle East. From the Middle East, not Americanized Muslims. Let's move 1 million Muslims from Iran into the United States and put them in Indiana right now, and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
You want to see problems? We'll have problems like you wouldn't even believe. There will be civil war in the street. People will be stabbing and butchering each other in the streets. So I hate religion altogether. I don't like any of it. I'm not defending Christianity over Islam. I don't like any of it. It's all stupid. I think it's I don't want to hear any of it. I know that's rude or insulting, but the idea that religion should be allowed to change cultures, so that my culture should be completely changed, and I should have to listen to prayers being sang at 3 times a day, and everybody's got to stop and wait for them to pray and then go on with their day and all of that stuff. Man, fuck that shit. Fuck religion. All of it. It all needs to go away. And if we got rid of religion, we might actually have a functioning party that could actually do things again, instead of sticking up for this religion over this religion, because that's what it's come down to as well. Even Christians in the Democrat Party are willing to subjugate other Christians because they don't want to look like they're bullying Muslims. And I'm like, this isn't about bullying anyone. This is exactly the same thing you're talking about that you see in the South. For example, how many times have you heard this statement? I wasn't racist until I until I went to prison. How many times have you heard that? I've seen it. I've seen guys who are like, and they go to prison, and all of a sudden they're a minority and they don't like it, and they're being stepped on and kicked around. And I'm like, well, what do you think the minorities got in their whole life? They got kicked on and stepped around. Why do you think they're so fucking mad all the time? And why do you think they take it out on you when they do? And I know even saying they is racist, but I mean, for God's sakes, you got to have a conversation somewhere, and language, no matter how much it matters, you still have to fucking use it.
Chad.
Okay, sorry, off topic. So here's the thing.
Hold on. You go right. Like you say, that's what's so fun and engaging about talking to you, because I disagree with you on so much fundamentally. I mean, like super, like deep worldview things, but I can dialogue with you because you say some things that I just completely agree with, and I just completely disagree with others. You acknowledge that culture does matter.
Well, what I'm saying is this, Devin. You're saying, is this going to fracture the Democrat Party? It already is fractured.
I agree.
It's fractured among people like me.
What would this country look like?
Okay,
Hold on.
Look, I'm going to say something right now that's going to piss off most of the viewers, especially people on my side. Mark Twain wrote a book called Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And he wrote another one called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And in those two books, there is a character named Nigger Jim. Not the N-word Jim, Nigger Jim. That's what he was called in the book. I'm an adult. I'm an educated adult, and I don't need somebody to tell me I have to say the N-word instead of nigger when I'm talking about it academically. Stop being a fucking idiot and separating and isolating everybody to the extent that we can't win an election and we get Donald Trump in the White House. You morons! Does that wrap it up for you? Because that's where the Democrat Party's at right now. We're in a situation where everybody wants their say, everybody wants to be important, and everybody wants exactly what they want only and nobody else. Well, guess what? A, you can't change history. B, just because some guy may or may not have, as running for the Supreme Court, Jesus Christ, he was 17 years old, she was 16, and they made a big hub-to-do about this. I was like, are you fucking stupid?
And we have no way of proving it at all. None.
Nothing. There's nothing about that at all. And we're bitching about that stupid shit when we have this guy with his hand on the football who could just wake up and go, oh, I took, I guess, one too many amphetamines today. Fuck them. Bam. Nuclear war. Are you fucking stupid? That's where I'm at with the Democrat Party.
All I'm saying is this.
Not liberal. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe people should be able to own guns if they want to. If they're wackos, take their fucking gun away. I also believe that women have a choice to do with their body as they see fit. And if there's an umbilical cord tied to that body, that's still their body. And I don't think there's an argument that can be had for that. And I believe that we should feed people, house people, educate people, and give people health care. I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think that's that far left. And I'm a super far left liberal now. How is that possible, Devin?
I think there is a lot to consider with all the things you just rolled out. But I will say this. I think that talking and debating this kind of stuff, like there's a lot of people, I don't bring this up very much, but there's a lot of people that when I go to my church and I'm around like-minded people who think a lot like I do, who share the same fundamental worldviews as I do. The only thing that discourages me about my side that I'm sure that you see on your side is the unwillingness to talk to the other side, the unwillingness to dialogue, the unwillingness to even make yourself vulnerable to your positions. And I don't stand on that. I would love to see it. I hope the Democrat Party does fracture, not because I just want to win, because I'm not invested in the Republican Party. It's not my thing. I'm not invested like that politically. It's not really my agenda in life. I enjoy combat sports. I'm a self-professing Christian. I love my faith. I love my family. I want to try to control what I can control in my life. I focus a lot on kids that I don't talk very often about, but I want to leave a good example. I want to see a generation flourish at my hands from the good works that I've done and the investments that I've done.
And you've done a lot of them.
That's the kind of stuff I want to see. That's what I'm invested in. Politics, I like to talk about it because I like to stay informed. I like to dialogue with people. But I want to see. So I'm not really invested in the Republican Party and just winning politically. I want to see the Democratic Party fracture because I think the Republican Party would follow. And I would love to see a day where we have our establishment candidates. We have Trump, we have Biden, but we also have Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul. And at that point, we're going to have a lot of options. We're going to have a real debate in this country. We're going to have a real day of reckoning about where we stand. We're going to hear some intellectual things where we don't have just these two monolithic, this duality of power that just can control narratives and control their media people and limit debates and make things stupid and shallow.
Sound bites.
Sound bites. I want to see something deeper. I think podcasting and technology and civil dialogue, I think that's really come a long way. And that's where I want to see this country go. And, you know, if that means that I need to discuss things with people that don't necessarily agree with me or I don't necessarily agree with them, so be it. I mean, we're gonna find some common ground somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and we're gonna learn to respect each other. We're gonna learn to understand where each other are coming from. But you don't see that today, and it's a shame. But you know, this is a combat sports podcast. We love combat sports. It's what this was started about. But we branched into these other things because you can't even talk about sports without culture and worldview and politics and stuff coming up because it's intertwined. It's all around us. And, you know, all of us have beliefs, all of us have personalities, and either we learn to share in those and, you know, learn from those and embrace each other in love and peace and you know, embrace our differences on this earth, or we separate and fight. And that's been the story of human history. And, you know, I can't change the whole world, but I can change me. And, you know, that's where we're at.
You know, I'll take that, Devin. And, you know, I know I'll get a lot of hits and a lot of hassle and blowback over my language and my selection of words. I'm okay with that. Bring it on. We can have a discussion, but don't expect me to say the P word when the word is pussy. We're adults. We can say the word pussy because we're adults. It's a word. You know, Frank Zappa was really famous for that when he took on, shit. I can't believe I just forgot her name.
You know, that's something that I have an argument with some of my Christian friends that do not believe our speech needs to be seasoned with salt and needs to be pure and all that. And I'm fine with that. That's a fine position to take. But what I do have a problem about is when it gets into like conversations of art, you know, where they write off art or movies or some music that, you know, uses profanity or something, even if they don't talk that way. The problem that I have with that is because no, I want art to represent the world how it is. I want people to I want to hear, and that goes along with what you're just saying. Mark Twain, Laura Ingalls Wilder. You know, when we are reading this literature from that era, and it might be something that is brought up today. I want to hear that culture the way it was. I want to see a snapshot into that culture. And when we have, as you mentioned, censorship of past material going on,
insanity.
It's a constant misrepresentative of reality.
Imagine this. I don't know if you've seen Harriet or not. It's a landmark, incredible film. I forget her name now. Evan. She is absolutely stunning in this. Can you imagine if we watch that movie and they're beating slaves and they're doing all these horrible things, and they go, "You better knock it off. You N-words get busy. If you N-words aren't busy, we're gonna beat you N-words into your N-word ass will never move again, and we'll sell your N-word down the line." Can you imagine if they said things like that? And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play that idiotic game where I censor my language when I know what I'm talking about. I'm not calling somebody that. That's repulsive to me. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to say the word simply because, oh, that word's so offensive that I can't say it anymore. What's the next word that's so offensive you can't say? Because I hear people say Jew all the time. And technically speaking, Jew is a derogatory comment. I hear it all the time.
I've said it many times on this podcast.
And it's a derogatory comment in all in
Well, I don't mean it by, but you know how I mean it. I don't mean it by talking about the average Jewish ethnic
when does it when
political motive, a political Jewish establishment.
When's that the next word they attack? When is it you have to know the difference between queer, lesbian, gay, or bisexual? I don't include transsexual in there because they don't generally include themselves in that. Most people
I don't know why the gay and lesbian crowd is associated with them, but it just blows my mind. But go ahead.
But when is it that all of a sudden it's not okay to say gay anymore? Well, he's not gay. He's you know what? I got corrected in an academic, in a graduate class. I was corrected because I said homosexuals, which is technically it's definitionally
Twilight Zone. It's Twilight Zone things.
They are homosexuals. They
It's
want to have
Orwellian, Chad.
same sex, right? And I was corrected by the professor, who I don't know what her sexual proclivities were, and I don't care. I looked at her and I said, you know, Dr. Heath, are you telling me that I'm supposed to say gay, lesbian, transsexual, bisexual, or queer, not homosexual? And she goes, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's the term. And I go, since when? And she goes, well, it's been that way a long time. And I said, I guess I didn't get the memo. Because
it's censoring of language, Chad, and it starts with one thing and it will branch out into other things. That's why when I was on the phone with you earlier, we were talking about wages and capitalism and socialism and all this stuff. Dude, the most thing, and it sounds cliche, and I understand, and I've been through my wrestling periods where I'm like, you know, freedom's kind of an illusion. There's always things we're not free to do and all that. The only thing we can do on this earth to maximize our diversity and to maximize our free our ability to express ourselves and to say things and to differ and to not have the same standards that we apply on others come back to bite us on our things is just maximize human freedom. We've got to let people be free. We got to, because if we don't, it could come back on us, and we can start going down these lines of censoring language and censoring speech. And, you know, it reminds me of that, you know, they came for the Christians, they came for the Jews, they came for them. And I didn't speak up because that wasn't me, but then they came for me and there was nobody left, you know, like if we really believe in diversity and we want our thoughts to, I'll say this I'll say this in my Sunday school class. We cannot go around, even though I believe God is sovereign over everything, you know, and he's his law is supreme. I genuinely believe that. That is my worldview as a Christian. Do I want to impose that here on earth? No, because I don't want you to impose something on me. So,
yeah, so if I can't make fun of Muslims, or not make fun of, if I can't criticize what I believe to be, as Sam Harris said, the motherlode of bad ideas in religion, if I can't criticize that, for example, your wife can't drive, your wife can't leave the house without you, etc., and so forth. I also can't criticize Christians when they say that, well, you know, Leviticus, and they go on about Leviticus, and then of course I always ask them, well, what about that, you know, eating shellfish and wearing two kinds of cloth and that kind of thing? You got a problem with that too? So,
well, come on, you're more versed in that to know that stuff was.
I'm simply saying that they're the same thing. In essence, it's the same thing. You're trying to police or legislate a word.
I agree.
And we don't have any right to do that. We don't have a right to tell people what they can and can't say, be short of fire in a movie theater thing, you know, that that whole thing. Yeah, there's a limit to freedom of speech. If somebody's a Nazi, I'm not buying vegetables off of them. I'm not going to go hang out with them. But
and on top of that, you know how stupid that it would be to try to censor that, because if there was enough people that were wanting to defend Nazism and white supremacy in this country,
wind up joining.
That could make it a legitimate political movement. Is there anything that we can do to stop it by just trying to ban it? I'll tell you, the thing that's going to make this kind of stuff more and more prevalent is by constantly focusing on it, constantly hammering it, because then you're going to have that every reaction has a reaction.
And I call it the Tylenol effect. The copycat. When I was a kid, somebody put cyanide in a couple of bottles of Tylenol, and it killed a couple of people. And then it spread across the country, and suddenly all Tylenol was pulled off the shelves. And this went on for maybe 4 to 6 months. It was every night on TV, another Tylenol scare. And I kept thinking to myself, and I was a little kid, and that's when I realized the power of media. I must have been maybe 10. And I realized the power of media to convince people of stuff that's just not really true.
Not true.
To whip them into a panic. And they're doing the same thing. My party, my people are doing the same thing. They're whipping people into a panic about stuff that doesn't really exist. And even if it exists, and I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. I'm not saying that sexism doesn't exist. I'm not saying that homophobia doesn't exist. Those exist and they should be eradicated. Absolutely. But you will never eradicate them through prohibition. You will eradicate them through education, not legislation.
I completely agree. And check this out, Miguel. I almost called you Miguel. Check this out, Chad. I don't know if you've ever read this quote, but it's from, I know you know who Edward Bernays is, father of public relations. This was the same guy who the federal government came to and was asking them, how can we get women to smoke? It's seen as taboo, and he told them, fund some celebrities, fund the suffrage movement. You'll get some radio ads. You'll have them hooked in ears. He was he wrote 2 classic books about public mind control, crystallizing the public opinion, and the book just simply titled Propaganda. This is a quote, and I'm going to bring it up here on screen. I'm going to solo this out from the book Propaganda. It says that the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast number of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental process and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind.
Wow.
Is that not one of the craziest statements ever? That was written by Edward Bernays in his book.
I think it's one of the most spot on statements I've heard. Again, I know I repeat this a lot, but I always reduce everything anymore down to the television series Survivor, which I think is the greatest social television experiment ever. And Survivor is a microcosm of exactly what our body politic is, of what our social politic is, of what normality is, of what indoctrination and education are. All of those things come from people who manipulate other people through language, invisible or otherwise. And most language comes in as the statement read, and I've never heard that before. I haven't read that, but
we have a visitor.
Hey, how are you doing, little buddy? And most language is silent. Everybody knows that 90% of language comes without words. And so maybe that's how Trump is doing it. And maybe Biden could take a page off of it and he could win the election. that way. I don't know, but
Hey,
I know
we're gonna have to cut this off.
we have to stop isolating. We'll wrap it up with this, but I know we have to stop. We as Democrats have to stop isolating people based on whatever their personal proclivities are inside their home. We're supposed to be the ones protecting that. We're supposed to be the ones that are supposed to support the LGBTQ community, and we're supposed to do all of these things. But when they radicalize it, and we're supposed to support and protect Christians, and we're supposed to support religion and Muslims and Taoists and anything else that exists in the crazy religious theological world. But nonetheless, if we're going to keep censoring everything, and I'm in agreement that, look,
Hey, I really got to wrap this up, Chad. So
take them down. It's done. I'm in agreement with that. But beyond that, look at how much has come back to bite us on the ass, where we thought it was fun, where we thought it was terrible when they did it, and when we did it, we're trying to make excuses for Al Franken, and we wound up losing a great senator and a great leader in our party because we have to follow our own bullshit, and that's really what it is. It's bullshit, and I'm calling it like it is, and if people don't like it, you don't have to tune in. You don't have to like me. You can tell me how much you hate me. I don't care. It's not going to hurt me any. You can do what you want. Hey,
well,
Devin,
I love you. And I'm going to tell you good night at this point because this has been a good podcast. Good night of content. So we will talk soon, Chad.
Namaste.
Talk to you soon.